In this session, we will recap some of the major influences on wine style in Ontario and discuss which styles of wine have established themselves as most important. We will also provide some guidance as to vintage quality and benchmark producers. As we have discussed, the main factors influencing wine style in Ontario are the lakes, the escarpment, and degrees latitude. Although there are slight variations between Niagara, Lake Erie North Shore, and Prince Edward County, in general, all regions will have warm to hot, humid summers, cold winters, and distinctive spring and fall seasons with variable degrees and timing of frost and rain. In Lake Erie North Shore and Prince Edward County, winter damage is more of a threat, so extreme measures such as mounding up, burying canes, and use of special protective materials are more common. Soils vary significantly from vineyard to vineyard, but in general we expect to see plenty of clay and sand loams in the flatter areas and more rocky soils on the gentle slopes of the benches. In Prince Edward County, the predominance of limestone is of great importance to the style of wines produced there. When we look at vintages, we tend to generalize about vintage quality across the entire province. The list provided here shows you those vintages that were generally considered warm and dry and thus excellent for a wide range of varieties, including fuller-bodied reds. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have the generally cool and damp vintages that were difficult for producers and typically ended up with better whites with crisp acids and moderate alcohol levels. For varieties like Chardonnay and Riesling, these cooler vintages are actually quite ideal. The balance of the vintages listed above are those which had a real mix of heat, sunshine, frost, and rain throughout the season, leading to huge variability in the wines produced. Producers who picked early to avoid later harvest season rains produced lighter, clean, fresh wines, whilst others waited to pick late in the season, and the wines are richer, fuller-bodied, but may exhibit subtle oxidative or lightly bruised character from time to time. The A-list varieties are those that have clearly demonstrated over many years their ability to produce a wide range of high-quality wines in the majority of vintages by a significant number of producers. The B-list varieties are either those that rely on special warm and dry vintages to become exceptional, or are produced by a smaller number of committed and serious wineries who believe in their value for the future. Some of these varieties are also of questionable economic feasibility because of their severe winter cold sensitivity or their inability to get fully ripe in many vintages. If a producer is perpetually dealing with underripe fruit or damaged vines, then it becomes a question of whether or not these varieties are the right choice for the business. Having said that, with the warming trends that much of the world are experiencing, some of the varieties we consider questionable today might just be the most important varieties for the future. For this reason alone, it is worthwhile to not pigeonhole our choices too soon in Niagara. Much more experimentation and experience is required to determine exactly what our vineyard landscape will look like in the decades ahead. One of the too often overlooked wine styles in Ontario is blended wines. These wines are made by the vast majority of wineries, and yet if they don't have the familiar name of a single well-known grape variety like Chardonnay or Cabernet Sauvignon, or slightly less well-known term Meritage on the label, many consumers overlook them. The fact is they are a good idea for Ontario because regardless of vintage conditions, there will always be enough good grapes to make high-quality wine if these varieties are blended. Like Bordeaux, France, where Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Malbec, and Petit Verdot are blended every year in varying proportions to ensure the best possible wine is being made, regardless of the harvest weather conditions. If Merlot is excellent, but Cabernet not so much, then the percentage of Merlot can be slightly increased. In Ontario, innovative two-varietal blends such as Riesling Gewürztraminer or Baco Cabernet, and the everything but the kitchen sink blends, where multiple varieties are used, provide wineries with a consistent, unique product at a more reasonable cost because they aren't relying on any one single variety to be perfect in a given year. It also allows a winery to blend secondary cuts of different varieties into a well-priced, enjoyable blend, often with surprising complexity. Top Cabernet, Merlot, and Syrah barrels may be chosen to produce the top single varietal wines, but what do you do with the barrels that don't make the cut? You blend them. Given our climate and soils, sparkling wines are certainly an excellent choice for parts of Ontario. Although Charmat method is used by some to produce friendly, aromatic, easy-drinking bubblies, the vast majority of producers focus on high-quality, brut-style wines made in the same traditional bottle-fermented method used in Champagne, France. Pinot Noir and Chardonnay are clearly two varieties that thrive in many parts of Ontario, so make up the majority of sparkling wines. Having said that, there are some interesting bubblies made with other varieties such as Riesling, Chenin Blanc, or Sauvignon Blanc, and these wines are often less expensive. Since 2013 or so, there's been an explosion of sparkling wine options in Ontario. It seems that everyone has jumped on board now that the sparkling production infrastructure is in place, and small producers can ship off their bottles to get them riddled and disgorged off-site. Further, numbers suggest that consumer demand for sparkling wine is increasing year over year. Clearly, this is a style of wine that is here to stay and might soon become one of the most important mainstay wines coming out of Ontario's vineyards. Some of the top sparkling wine producers in Ontario include Henry of Pelham, Trius, Cave Spring, and Kew Vineyards in Niagara, Huff Estates and Hinterland in Prince Edward County, and Colio in Lake Erie North Shore. Another important style produced in Ontario is the range of dry white wines made from a staggering array of varieties. As a top international Riesling producer, Ontario takes advantage of its combination of heavy clay and stony soils and ideal growing season to make a huge range of Riesling styles. Furthermore, as the vines continue to get older and older, the extract and complexity of the wines increases. Chardonnay is also another of Ontario's white knights. So important a variety is Chardonnay that Ontario decided in 2011 to invent the now hugely popular and extremely well-attended International Cool Climate Chardonnay celebration, which brings the world of Chardonnay producers to Niagara to sample alongside our own excellent examples. Unlike Riesling, which most often tends to have high acidity, vibrant green apple, lemon, and herbal floral notes, and moderate alcohol levels, one main style of Ontario Chardonnay is impossible to nail down. Feather-light, mineral-rich wines a la Burgundy abound, as do full-bodied, rich, and oaky versions more similar to those of the warm climate of California or Chile. Besides these two important varieties, Sauvignon Blanc grown in Ontario produces excellent herbaceous, citrusy, and pungent white wines, some with light oaking. Pinot Gris is another popular variety in Ontario, and although there isn't much acreage devoted to it, this figure is growing as the variety sees growing demand year after year. Those from PEC are light and minerally, similar to versions from northern Italy, while Niagara and Lake Erie North Shore deliver rich, more oily aromatic dry versions like those found in Oregon and New Zealand. Viognier, the glorious white grape of France's northern Rhone Valley, also produce aromatic, rich, yet fresh, lightly oaked whites when picked at the prime of ripeness and handled with care, like those from Fielding and Creekside wineries. When looking at dry white wine benchmarks in Ontario, we can break it down by variety. For Riesling, consider 30 Bench, Flat Rock, Hidden Bench, 13th Street, and Cave Spring, and take special note of single vineyard bottlings from each of these producers. 30 Bench has the historic Old Vines, Steel Post and Wood Post vineyards and Triangle Vineyard bottlings. Flat Rock has Nadja's Vineyard. Hidden Bench has the Felsec and Rosamel Vineyard bottlings. 13th Street bottles a June's Vineyard Riesling from the old Alsatian Clone 49, and the Old Vines bottling from a blend of Weiss 21B and Geisenheim 239 clones. And Cave Spring, of course, has the famous Cave Spring Vineyard, one of the original 21B clone bottlings. For Chardonnay, consider Norman Hardy and Rose Hall Run in Prince Edward County, and Todd's in Niagara For Sauvignon and Semillon blends, you might consider Stratus, Creekside, or Peller Estates. Off-dry whites are a very popular style of wine in Ontario. These wines permit growers to pick early to avoid autumn rains and frost. The relatively low Brix levels and high-ish acidity make wines with delicate levels of alcohol and pleasant, fruity flavors with a solid acid backbone to prevent them from ever being cloying. Some of the most well-known producers of off-dry white wines include Cave Spring, Henry of Pelham, Charles Baker, Tawes, and Vineland for Riesling, and Malivoire, Angels Gate, Culinary, Foreign Affair, Big Head, and Pelee Island for a range of other aromatic off-dry white varieties. You'll notice that there's an asterisk beside Culinary, Foreign Affair, and Big Head. This is to refer to the Appassimento style wines that they are producing and in fact specializing in. Rosé is another category of wines that is growing in popularity in Ontario. Unlike the past, where rosé wines were made only in years where the weather conditions prevented growers from making good quality red wines, producers today are setting aside specific vineyards and designing growing and picking protocols around the production of the best possible rosé wines. Like the rest of the world, the best of these rosés are made using the saignée method, where juice of one variety such as Cabernet Franc, Syrah, or Pinot Noir is run off the red grape skins after a short period of contact. The juice is very high quality with just the right amount of color, tannin, and aromas and flavors to make very high quality single varietal dry rosé wines. The less expensive option is to blend light reds or rosé wines with white wines to get the desired color and flavor profile. These wines are typically non-varietal designated and are amongst the most affordable wines produced in Ontario. Although most of Ontario wineries offer a rosé wine each year, some of the more reliable producers of both single varietal and blended rosés include Malivoire, Creekside, Henry of Pelham, Hidden Bench, Good Earth, Cave Spring, Angels Gate, and 13th Street. Dry red wines in Ontario can be very, very good. In vintages where the weather is cooler, lighter reds from Gamay Noir and Pinot Noir excel. In those warmer vintages with longer growing seasons where grapes can be left to hang into November, some of the bigger reds from Cabernet Sauvignon and Syrah can be excellent. Merlot and Cabernet Franc perform quite well in the majority of vintages. The point is, vintage should be researched before reds are purchased because one risks encountering wines with an excess of nasty pyrazine, dominant green or bitter character that is prevalent in the cooler, damp years. An emerging style in Ontario is Appassimento reds. This technique, used originally in Veneto, Italy for the famous Amarone wine, involves harvesting ripe grapes and laying them in temperature and humidity controlled drying rooms where the grapes may sit for up to 120 days. Over this period of time, the grapes dehydrate slightly, thus concentrating the flavors and tannins. This leads to powerful red wines with elevated alcohol levels and rich tannins and mouthfeel. Care has to be taken to ensure that the wines were made from ripe grapes in good years. If not, these concentrated reds may have excess bitterness from underripe green tannins. For Pinot Noir, some of the very best producers to consider are Inniskillen, Domaine Caylus, Tawes, Hidden Bench, Flat Rock, Norman Hardy, and Batchelder. For Gamay Noir, there are far fewer options as there are only a small number of producers focusing on this variety. The better ones whom you can count on for good examples regardless of vintage condition are Malivoire, 13th Street, Chateau des Charmes, and Huff Estates. For Cabernet Franc, one of the signature red varieties in Ontario, consider Tawes, Ravine, Pearl Morissette, and Viewpoint in Lake Erie North Shore. Like Gamay Noir, Syrah is not produced by a lot of wineries in Ontario, but those that take it very seriously and produce amazing results include Creekside, Casaba, and Jackson Triggs, especially from their Delane vineyard. For Bordeaux-style blends called Meritage in North America, consider Stratus, Two Sisters, Fielding, Pillitteri, Southbrook, Culinary, and Henry of Pelham. Historically, and still today, the most important wine style produced in Ontario is sweet wine. Ice wine makes up a majority of our international exports and has paved the way for other Ontario table wines to enter markets such as Japan, China, Korea, and the USA. The rarity and high selling price of this product and importance to our economy has led legislators to develop some of the most stringent growing, harvesting, and production rules of all wines, and these rules are aligned with those of other famous ice wine producing nations such as Germany and Austria. Because of the Ontario's cold winters, the region's winemakers can produce ice wines practically every year and from a huge array of varieties. In Canada, we've frozen pretty much every grape we've ever grown and made ice wine from it. In exceptional vintages, ripe grapes are frozen in December and can be picked in the vintage year they were grown in with high sugars, high balancing acidity, and vibrant, clean fruit flavors. In less ideal vintages, grapes are left to hang for months, waiting for the all-important minus 10 degrees Celsius to descend on the vineyards for 4 hours or more. In some vintages, this can be as late as the following March. During this waiting period, the grapes can break down and oxidize on the vine, and yields can drop significantly due to rot and bird or other pest damage. The bottom line is not all ice wines are created equal, and a consumer is advised to find producers whose style they appreciate and stick with them. The two most important varieties used for ice wine in Ontario today are Riesling and Vidal. Riesling is more expensive but yields wines with electric acidity and magnificent citrusy, floral, and mineral aromas and flavors. Vidal can also produce excellent ice wines, but often in a sweeter, richer style with more dried fruit and caramelly notes. Red ice wines are quite rare, and yet the best are worth it. Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc are popular varieties for this style. Some of the better historic producers of ice wine in Ontario include Inniskillen, who put the style on the Ontario map with its international success story, the 1989 Braeburn Vineyard Vidal ice wine, which won the top award at Vinexpo in France. It continues to produce benchmark examples every year, including a unique and outstanding sparkling and oak-aged versions. Other excellent producers include Jackson Triggs, Henry of Pelham, Cave Spring, Peller Estates, Rife, Conzelman, Pillitteri, and Royal de Maria. Finally, fortified wines are still produced in Ontario, even though their popularity has waned since their heydays of the 60s and 70s. Today, one can purchase wines named Apera, Tawny, or Ruby, as it is no longer legal to use the terms port or sherry on our labels. It is difficult to say what the future of this style of wine is in Ontario, but when one considers where the best fortified wines in the world are produced, they are almost all sourced from hot, dry countries on the Mediterranean or in the Southern Hemisphere. Perhaps this is a statement of the potential quality possible here. If fortified wines continue to be made locally, perhaps it will be simply to fill the needs of a disappearing market who still appreciate the inexpensive, simple, sweet style that was so popular over 40 years ago.